So I was probably agnostic. I go to the great Ricky Gervais for some of the insights he has into religion. He should be Ricky Gervais for Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So if you're a Christian, what is the purpose of science? What did your God create the science for if you're not prepared to believe what it's saying? Having said that, we'll be going to Mass with my wife tomorrow because she's a Catholic. There's something there, but I need more evidence. I think I'd need something like an actual sighting or an epiphany, I believe, is the correct expression, to something to appear. And it could be nothing other than a God.
Hey there, it's still Holy Saturday, part of the Easter weekend. Just had another conversation, this time with an agnostic, of the kind that I don't speak to very often these days anymore. Someone who actually kind of gets a lot of their ideas and thoughts and arguments from people like Ricky Gervais, and he would not go as far as being maybe as so derisive as Ricky is in terms of religion. A lot of the arguments that Ricky brings up do kind of resonate with him, and so we had the kind of conversation about evidence for science versus religion, role of religion in human lives and in societies. And so he was a little bit dismissive, but not overly mocking, let's say. That we still had a very respectful conversation. I enjoyed it. I wished him in the end that he approaches religion with the same way that he approaches science. The evidence that religion and religious claims put forth, that he would consider it just as seriously as some of the evidence that he considers from science. So I left him with that. I wished him well. We parted on very good terms. I hope to see him again, maybe have a good conversation. So he's local, so maybe that's something that will happen one day. Anyway, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and happy Easter again. See you in the next video. God bless. Do you have any faith, any belief, any religion?
Not really, no. So I was probably agnostic as opposed to an atheist. I'm not saying that there isn't anything out there, just that we are very unlikely to have the mental capacity to know what it is. So
It's interesting. And
I think that's pretty much the definition of agnostic, isn't it?
yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. And has that kind of changed for you over your lifetime? Have you been
really,
a little bit closer?
Not really. Strangely enough, I go to the great Ricky Gervais for some of the insights he has into religion. I think he's been on chat shows, and the host has been religious, and he says, well, listen, it's generally recognised there are about 3,000 religions in the world, possibly give or take a couple of hundred or maybe 1,000. Let's say 3,000. You don't believe in 2,999 of them, and I don't believe in 3,000 of them. They're not that much different.
That's fair when you put it like that, in numbers, yeah.
And the other thing, this might be a Ricky Gervais-ism. That's possibly not. I can't remember where I got it from. So science says that the human race has been here for roughly 100,000 years in its present form. Like, we could go back 100,000 years, we could interbreed, so we are the same species. And most religions say that their creator came back to Earth just for the very last couple of percentages of that time, say the last 2,000 years. Both Christianity and Islam say the same thing. So why has that supposed God abandoned us for 98% of our time on Earth?
Right. Although Christianity would say something different, though, to be fair, right? So they would say from Genesis, right? It starts from the very beginning of the first couple, Adam and Eve.
But then I go by science. Do you believe that the human race was created at the time the Bible says it was, I don't know the exact time, but only a few thousand years ago, rather than 100,000 years, and the Earth has been here for 4.5 billion years.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
So the Bible doesn't speak about numbers in terms of like exactly when this may have happened, and there are different interpretations, and there are different schools in Christian thought which say, okay, well, what do we mean when we say the 7 days of creation?
How it doesn't literally mean 7 days. It's just a
there are people who believe that it does, and there are people who don't believe that it does. But I think, as a Christian, I would just say, I think the important part of the creation story is that we were created with intent, and done so differently than the rest of the creation. So Christians, at the very least, would reject.
So you are Christian in your faith?
So I am, yes. Yes, I am. So the Christians would reject, at the very least, the idea that we've arose from animals. We would say that we are.
Do you reject that?
I would reject that. Yes, I would reject that idea. Yeah.
What about all the proof from studies of evolution that is the case?
So I haven't seen proof as such at all. I think there's some, you could call it evidence, which speaks about genetic overlaps. It speaks about certain.
Generally, science says that we have evolved from animals, and previous to that, from microbial organisms that came out of the sea.
So the science would claim that. I think it's a theory that has its propositions and has its conclusions, but it doesn't have any such proof. So, for example, scientists would agree, at the very least, that they do not know how life began. Right, so how we went from
they've not been able to recreate it. They've tried numerous times. I think the thing they haven't got is the time factor.
Yes,
they can't recreate it. They can put all the components of life together, which everybody agrees could have existed prior to life. They've never been able to recreate life, but then they haven't had millions of years for these things to interact.
Absolutely, yeah. But I would say scientists now know enough about, the more they studied things like simple cell organisms, the more they study the complexity of what's happening within the cells, they realize the complexity of how the whole thing comes together. And so time is you bring it up, and I think it's an interesting concept, right? That 15 billion years, or however long that science would say that the universe has existed from the Big Bang, in many cases is not enough for things like, at the very chemistry level, for the proteins to fold in such a way that a simple cell would have to come about. So I admit, and I would sort of say that I come from a scientific background myself. I'm a physicist, I'm an astronomer, and I'm a computer scientist. That's my background, right? So I've studied a lot of science, right? So I love science. I'm not rejecting it at all, but I want to sort of recognize the limits of it, that it says about itself that it has, and that is.
So if you're a Christian, what is the purpose of science? So if you don't believe if you decide to not believe in parts of it, what is the purpose of it? What did your God create the science for if you're not prepared to believe what it's saying?
So it's not that I don't believe it. I very much believe what it says. That as long as it's
like you do believe that the Earth is round.
Of course I do.
Why do you say of course?
Because it's experimentally proved and it's been observed. And
you haven't yourself seen it, have you?
I don't have to see everything. So, for example, I believe in quantum theory. I don't. A lot of people not experience or
is that
atomic structure.
From you not believing in evolution when people put? Okay, they can't. It's not evidence. Well, I was going to say like a photograph of somebody committing a crime, but these days, maybe that's not evidence. If you watch some of the things that are being created by AI now.
But, so I would say I believe in evolution at a microevolution level. So no one denies what Darwin observed in terms of the beak changes, the feather changes of the birds. No one says that the dogs are not sort of evolving and we have control as human beings to create speciation and other things. No one's denying that.
So why would you project the theory about how human beings arose by the same way?
Because there's not enough evidence. I mean, there's, like I said, there's propositions and there's some evidence, but there's not enough.
Do you believe that the first human originated in Africa because they can trace back the mitochondrial DNA through the mother right back to the original human?
That's possibly true, yeah. That's possibly true, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, to go back to your question about as a believer, what do I do with science? I would go back to I stand on the shoulders of 19th century greats, Isaac Newton and people who have, with their Christian convictions, said, and with an assumption that if God created this world, he must have created it in an ordered way. That is why we have scientific laws. That is why we understand that the universe rests upon...
Your physics laws would say chaos increases. How can it possibly...
And it does increase, and that's the mystery that the science actually doesn't have an answer. So this is an argument...
Out of nothingness, this isn't increased chaos, this is less chaos, isn't it?
No, so I would say actually the idea of entropy is actually going very much in favor of a creator God, right? Because if the universe is the entropy is increasing, meaning if the chaos is increasing...
I don't know enough physics I'm more of a biologist. I studied biology at university.
Which is fair, right? So I mean, we can have this, very interesting sort of debates. But I think if we just go slightly beyond, let's, if you wouldn't mind, right? So obviously Easter. Let's maybe just discuss Easter for a moment, right? So Easter is a celebration of something that happened 2 years ago, right? That's been documented, historically attested to. What do you believe?
Sorry, Easter's something. What's this about 2 years ago?
No, 2,000 years ago.
Oh, you slipped out 2 years.
Oh, did I? I apologize if I said that. So I meant 2,000 years ago. Yeah. It's a celebration of the death of Jesus Christ, right?
But this Easter's about the rebirth, isn't it?
Well, both. So Good Friday yesterday was a celebration of his death, and then 3 days by Jewish counting, Sunday is the day of resurrection. So we celebrate both. Do you believe that has happened? Do you attest to that?
I don't discount that it might have happened, but I would like to see evidence for it.
So we have an interesting sort of dichotomy here. You're approaching.
I'll tell you what the other thing was.
You're approaching me from the same way that I approach you, right?
So the other great thing that Ricky Gervais said, he should be Ricky Gervais for Prime Minister. He said he believes in science. So if we took everything away and left enough human beings together to keep the population going with no knowledge at all that science would come back in exactly the same form, because they'd go out and they'd experiment. The religion would still be there, but it would never come back in the same way. You'd never have a God and like the Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit. What was it called? The
Trinity.
Trinity. That's the one I was thinking. It would never come back like that again. And obviously, he can't prove it, but I think he's right. Science would come back exactly as something like, I don't know, a pH or something. It would come back. It wouldn't be called a pH, but it would be. They'd know that the acidity and the alkalinity or something is very important, and they'd design a scale. They'd call it something else, but essentially it would be the same thing. And they'd come back with the whole of science all over again.
And I heard him say that. I watched when he said that. But what was going through my mind is I'm trying to understand what point is he trying to make. So what is the point that you think he's trying to make?
That's science. Everything I think of is based on science.
So science.
I'm not disputing that there might be some sort of creator. That is part of science, a being that is far superior to us. We have a very narrow window, haven't we? Like the electromagnetic spectrum, we've only a little bit. So science has spread it out, but we can only observe a very small amount of it. There might be a present around us that can observe everything. We just don't know it's there because we haven't got the bodily functions to be able to recognise it.
Absolutely. So I don't dispute that.
I'm not disputing that could possibly be the case. But everything, I base everything on science.
Well, not everything, right? Because I would say that you trust a few more things that science cannot explain. For example, your rationality. You're a very rational person. Science does not have an explanation for what rationality is.
No.
It assumes it. It's a beginning. It's a starting point, right? It doesn't understand consciousness. You're speaking to me. You cannot prove to me that you exist. You cannot prove to me in absolute terms nothing, right? Because I could always say that we're in a matrix and we're figments of imagination, right?
It's coming out now. A lot of people believe we are all simulants.
Well, this is it. There's a simulation theory,
but you
right?
cannot disprove it.
You cannot prove it or you cannot disprove, right? So we have a series of beliefs. You and I both have. We have to live our lives according to. But as you say, and I will fully agree with you, we base our beliefs based on the evidence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you have evidence that largely puts the weight on the side of science.
Yeah.
And I would say, look, I acknowledge everything about science. I love science and do that
Yeah.
stuff. But I also believe there's enough evidence about some of the religious claims, and I do sincerely believe that there is, right? So I believe that the historical writings in the Bible that we have do go back to 2,000 years ago. I believe that they were written by eyewitnesses who actually saw and recorded what who recorded what they saw. They were not conspiracy theories. They actually were trying their best to record what they saw, and what they saw was incredible in basically reality. And in fact, so much so that our history changes, right? So today is 2026.
But they would also say that was absolutely incredible if it was a superior being that had evolved on another planet coming to visit. They would say exactly the same things.
Potentially they would, right? But that wasn't the case. That's a hypothetical, right? That wasn't the case.
You can't say it wasn't the case, because it's a possibility it was.
Well, he never claimed that he was from another planet. He claimed very clearly what Jesus said, very clearly what he was and how he came from, and he lived a life, so he had a history, right? He didn't just appear out of nowhere. He was born, and he lived 33 years in a surrounding, right? So it wasn't something that could be taken away from the fact that he came to this earth as a baby, right? And then lived a life and then died on a crucifixion, right? Bart Ehrman, historian who's not a Christian, he says,
Who's this?
Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman is not a Christian historian, but he's one of the biggest biblical historians. He would say one of the biggest historically
attested... So he's not a Christian, but he believes that...
No, let me finish my sentence. So he's not a Christian himself in the sense that he doesn't believe in the claims of Jesus, but he said he's a biblical scholar, means he researches claims of the first century and other things. But he would say one of the biggest historically attested fact that we have in recorded history is the fact that Jesus Christ was crucified. Yeah. In fact, that we know about the practice of crucifixion very much because of what Bible has written, right? That's how we got to know what crucifixion is about. Not the only, but certainly one of the most detailed.
I know they also know that from astronomy they have predicted, not predicted. What's the going back in the past? They've postulated that in the past there would have indeed been a bright star in the sky at the very time that.
Perhaps, maybe there was a supernova, maybe it was some sort of other phenomena that has appeared. Absolutely, it's very, very possible, right? But I'm just basically saying, look, we have evidence, right? Yeah. Evidence for Christian perspective that we have to take on face value. So I appreciate Ricky Gervais. He's a very witty guy, probably much smarter and wittier than I can ever be, right? But I think what beyond all these sort of quips and wits, right? So my idea is like, okay, let's stop and think. What Christian claims
I think he stopped and thought very deeply about it all.
Well, that's great, but I think each individual person should probably do that for themselves.
I don't think many people do that these days.
Yeah, I agree with you. They don't.
I suppose they will do in war-torn countries because their life might be very short. But possibly in the Western world, you don't tend to think about it. You could probably ask, 100 people, and they say, I haven't got any time for religion, I've never really thought about it.
I've done this for maybe 15 years of this kind of conversation. I would say I would respectfully disagree with that, because I think there's a sense...
I've never gone around asking people about religion.
Fair, which is fair, right? I maybe have a bit of an advantage here, but I was going to share why I think so, right? I think even in the Western country, there's a sense, especially with the advent of technology and AI especially, people are beginning to ask, okay, if we're creating an AI that very much is almost indistinguishable from human beings, then who are we? What makes us distinct? What makes us special? Who are we as human beings? And I think as a result... I'm not saying there's all of a sudden people are becoming spiritual, but I think people are curious and asking questions. So what do the traditional religions have to say about who we are? Because that question is coming to the forefront now. Right?
I mean, what are we going to do So you know what AI is like now, and it's just come on in leaps and bounds in the last 10 or 15 years. What's it going to be like in, say, 100 years, where every single simple task that people go out to work and do now is done for us robotically? by something else. What is the purpose of human life?
Absolutely. That is going to be a very big question, right? What is the purpose of human beings, right? If we
and I think
vested
religion
in
only
everything.
arose after the time that we were living in caves and we had to hunt for food. All of our life was dedicated to survival. I don't think we probably thought about religion until the time when we started cultivating land and actually had some time to consider these matters.
Again, I would just...
You don't consider religion when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, do you?
What I would actually say, I would go back to your Homo sapiens. What does Homo sapiens mean? Sapiens is the sapiens is the idea of wisdom, and wisdom is not just about survival. So Neanderthals could be accused of exactly what you said, but Homo sapiens not, because the very idea of a sapiens
surely is a cultural. We've interbred with Neanderthals now. We are one of the same.
We did, but we would say that we are not Neanderthals. The reason we are not is because we have elements about sapiens that are coming through with culture, right, through paintings. And so that's an idea that goes beyond just survival. It goes into, okay, so there's something that binds us, and culturally so, spiritually so, even that goes beyond just the idea of survival, right? So I would say the idea of probably religion, some way or form, has been there since the very, advent of whatever we want to call ourselves, Homo sapien, or whatever it is that we would say that we are as a species, right? I think there's a sense that I would say the spiritual element of our existence, a hunger even, that comes, so we have a physical hunger, we have physical needs, we have emotional needs as well. Otherwise we would be just robots, right? But I think third component to me is the idea of there's a mind, body, and spirit, right? The third one being spirit. I do think people have that as well, hunger, the idea of who am I, what am I here to do, what is my purpose in life, and how do I relate to, if there is a God, how do I relate to him? Is there a way to know him? Am I fulfilling my life according to that design or not? And I'm not saying that everyone comes to the same conclusion or should come to the same conclusion, but I would say I would encourage people to think about that very strongly.
Well, having said that, we'll be going to mass with my wife tomorrow because she's a Catholic. Okay. So we go on Christmas and Easter under sufferance mainly. So. But it is I can see when I go into the church, and it has a very calming influence on people, and they truly believe what they're saying. It's like when you go. My wife has a love of going into churches when we go on a holiday, and there is I can accept that there is a kind of calm or a spiritualism when you walk in and you think of all the thousands of people who've been in there that are no longer around. It's there's something there, but I need more evidence.
That's fine. I appreciate it. You've been very kind and honest and gentle with me, but
it's getting me out of a workout, so
okay.
So I'll have a mental workout rather than a physical
workout.
one.
No, fair.
In fact, I think I'm probably I'm too late for the physical. I'll do another couple of laps. That will sort me out.
Just one thing I said I was going to leave you maybe with, and that is like, what would make the difference, right? You said need more evidence, need more conviction. What would be the 1, 2, or 3 things that would say, oh, okay, now that because one thing I usually
I think I'd need something like an actual sighting or an epiphany, I believe is the correct expression, to something to appear, and it could be nothing other than a god. And even then I'd have to question it.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I don't know if it was Ricky Gervais, but it was, I think, Richard Dawkins, right, who said, he was honestly speaking, but he was faced with that same question, right, and said, look, even if on the sky right now there were words written out, or maybe on the moon, the face of the moon, that says, Richard, I am God, believe in me, appeared out of nowhere, he would say he would still not believe, because he could have other explanations for it. Aerial phenomena, some sort of a prank, some sort of illusion, some sort of a trick, right? And so...
But would he ever believe it if he when he dies and there is an afterlife, would he be convinced of the afterlife even then?
Well, exactly. What I mean,
It depends what form it took.
What
really.
form it took, right? And we believe that once Christians believe once you're dead, that's it. The judgment begins, and either you're going to one place or the other. All sort of bets are over by then. But
Yeah.
I would just say, again, just kind of example, like what would be that thing? Would you be willing to believe it if it appeared before you, right? And that is it.
It would depend on the circumstances.
Yeah. And one thing, I usually encourage people to don't be afraid to maybe just put out a quick prayer to God, and God, if you're there, that epiphany, that revelation, do it for me.
I think people do that. Yeah. Even the sort of Ricky Gervaises of the world probably do that in times of crisis, don't they?
Well, I hope they do. I hope more people should do that. God listens to. I believe God listens and answers such prayers. So that would be my last maybe encouragement.
Yeah, I guess so. We went to we used to go down to Aylesford Priory, and there was a special chapel there, the Chapel of St Jude, the patron saint of lost causes. So not to be confused with Judas Iscariot.
No.
But we couldn't sell our flat, so we went down there, and my wife went in and had a few words with St Jude, and I think we sold our flat in the next couple of days.
Okay.
We always said that we went down to see St Jude, and that was the reason why.
Okay. All right.
But I'd
hopefully it wasn't a lost cause. Hopefully it was something that you could do something positive then with that transaction.
Well, we sold the flat, and got the house we live in now. So
there you go.
It was positive.
There you go. Wasn't so lost. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for
That's okay.
for honesty.
I'm quite happy to sit down and do nothing. My wife will tell you.